Hey everyone, welcome to Behind the Process here with RoboHead. I'm Will, and we talk with creative and marketing leaders around what their organizations are doing, challenges they're facing, successes they've had. And I'm really excited for this episode today. I have Grace Powell with me from Children's Mercy Hospital of Kansas City. Grace is responsible for managing all of the project work that comes into the queue for the Children's Mercy marketing and creative team. And so today, what I'm really excited to talk about is, one, how over the course of time she's, been improving how those projects are coming in and getting executed on, using data to kind of drive those improvements. And the most important thing, I think, for all of us is adoption. So how she is kind of using that story to identify areas of improvement and help all the stakeholders, not just the creative team, but their internal customers within the health system, move into kind of a common tool and a common process that serves them all very well, and make sure that the work that's being produced is not just high quality, but also getting produced more effectively and more efficiently. So Grace, welcome. Thanks so much for joining. Do you mind sharing a little bit more either about yourself or about your team? Would love to know some more specifics about you and the Children's Mercy team.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. I am really excited to talk about RoboHead and kind of our process today. I work specifically with our creative teams in marketing, so a lot with the design team, a lot with the photo video team. And over the last 3 years that I've been at Children's Mercy, my role has kind of expanded to where I'm looking at process as a whole. So how are our requesters engaging with our project management tool? How are our individual contributors making the work and using those tools within? And then how are we using the final deliverable process and getting that to directors and requesters and everyone that needs to see it? So there's kind of a multi-layered process that I'm leading and operating and making sure that everyone has a basic understanding of how it works. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do.
Awesome. And then, do you mind what's the size of the team roughly? I mean, just kind of how big is the team? How many projects are you working on? What do you kind of help us understand the lay of the land a little bit within the hospital?
For sure. So our marketing team is about a 40-person team. We're actually in the process of transitioning with another team and expanding. So there's a lot of change happening there. Our creative team, we have about, I'd say, probably 6 to 7 in-house creatives. And so that's both design and photo video team. And then in whole, our organization has about 8,000 people in it, and all of those people have access to our project management tool. So any of those 8,000 employees can submit a request and come and enter our queue and request something from marketing, basically.
Okay, awesome. So a little under 10 within the creative department, 40 in the marketing that's growing, and then you've got around 8,000 potential customers that could be asking you for stuff. Awesome.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, so as we get started here, would love to know, we talked a little bit about, a big part of what you're trying to do is really improve how work is coming in and getting kind of managed and executed on. Just elaborate on that. Like, what's the challenge that you've seen, and what exactly are we trying? Have you been, this 3-year process really been for you? What's the primary, the primary challenge that you've been trying to overcome, or thing you've been working to achieve?
Yeah. I kind of like to think about it almost in two parts. And the first part, it's really understanding the work. So when you're in that day-to-day process, you're in the project management tool, you're doing the request queue, it's really hard to step back sometimes and see, well, what is the work I'm approving? What are we working on? Is our work geared towards our strategy goals? Are we working towards the priority things? So I've been doing a lot of work understanding the work so we can better understand our team and using data to help with that. So I have a slide here, and one thing I tried to kind of share with our leaders is understanding our queue, what's coming into it, who has access to it, all of those things. So in whole, with our entire marketing team, not just the creative team, but we have like a web team, a social team, all those things. We had about 633 different individual requesters, so different clients, and then over 4,000 requests that we're having to manage and deal with. So that's a lot of work coming in, and then breaking that down. I also had an opportunity to look at the design team specifically And I was able to compare the first half of our fiscal year in 2025, first half of our fiscal year in 2026, and saw that we had a 46% increase in design requests. So we're ramping up work. And this is really insightful because our team can feel this, but it's hard to articulate. Like the work feels like more, but why is it more? How many more requests are we getting in? What is that percentage? How are we reaching our capacity thresholds? So this is really helping us to almost understand our story as our team. And not only just the work, but is our process working to scale and accommodate for this increase? So it's really helpful on both those fronts. Understanding your capacity, and then also are you able to reach that and meet kind of the demand that's happening.
As you talk about that, like it's not that your team is exponentially increasing to, it's not like you're hiring, you're not doubling the creative team. It's you really have to get, continue to drive efficiency so that you can deliver all of this work that you're being asked to work on, right?
Exactly. And it's one thing to go to leaders and say, we've had a lot of work come in this last year. And there's not really any grounding point to what that means. But when I go to them and say we've had a 46% increase in our request queue, that's grounded in something real and tangible. So it's a little bit more meaningful too, in trying to communicate kind of bigger strategy with executives who aren't in the day-to-day work, who don't understand the flow of things maybe as well.
They're not feeling the pain, and so you got to kind of expose them to what's going on the street, if you will.
Yes, exactly. And then the second part kind of is, now we've looked at the data and we understand our team, but how do we create that shared visibility, right? So from that requester point of view to the individual contributor in here every day to the director looking at it. One problem that we run into constantly is this kind of bottleneck model. And as a queue approver, as someone who's really involved in RoboHead, who understands the forms, I'm a great resource to go to. So I have a lot of our freelancers, our internal designers, requesters, directors, coordinators, all going to me for questions and needing answers about whether it's a project or the program itself. And trying to be helpful, I actually become a bottleneck in the process. So one thing that we've been trying to adopt and look at is kind of this idea of like a circle of trust, where we have a group of admin and approvers who are really well versed in RoboHead, who are like a go-to help team. Then we have this extra layer of individual contributors who really understand the program, but aren't so responsible for the back end experience.
Like they're
And
more
then we have
task
this top
focused,
layer
right?
managers and directors. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. They're task focused. They're using the reviews. They are getting the work done in there. It's built for them to use it to make their process easier. And then our managers and directors are really there for visibility. Are their teams working on what they need to work on? Are we in our threshold capacity? All those things. And then on the outside, we have our 8,000 requesters who are all kind of trying to come into this process in some way. Or, you could look at it as this is kind of our unit, our entity, and we understand our process and we can help within that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a model we've been trying to move towards to help with that bottleneck.
Okay. How's that been going? I assume there's a change management component there. You're kind of, you're just kind of, I guess, you're selling, the efficiency of not just having that single point of failure, or that single person that knows where everything is at, right? Leveraging the system to give everyone the visibility they need.
100%. One thing, it's going well, but I'd say one thing is creative has such a specific process, and other admins, other individual contributors working on different teams are going to need a slightly different process. And so one thing I've been trying to think of to help with this is, what are those process foundations that we know are working with the design team? When we're adjusting to that massive 46% increase in scale, what were the things working within our process to match that scale and accommodate for it? One is that single front door for all requests. So RoboHead's our source of truth, right? So anything coming in, we know it's not coming through email, it's not coming through a Teams chat, it's not through the cubicle conversations. We know that anything is visible and coming through that RoboHead queue. The role-based visibility and training, that's one that we're trying to work on, but really, really important for the foundation when you're trying to build out a process. And not everyone needs to have the same training necessarily, but it's more of a basic understanding of how it's working. How do we submit a request? It's through a form. Who approves it? It's, Grace, she manages this queue. So there's kind of a basic understanding of the flow.
And it's
Also
tailored to
clear
the
queue
it's tailored to
ownership.
the roles, right? So if I'm a designer, I don't need to understand the approval process as well. My main thing is I need to understand where my work's at. How can I pick it up, execute on it? I don't need to get wrapped around the axle on these peripheral things that I'm not really touching. That's part of the kind of the role based training, right? We're keeping people laser focused on how they're going to interact with the process and the system.
Absolutely. Yes, that's really well said. Exactly. Yeah, that's when we're talking about role-based. Yeah, kind of those different points of views and things. Um, Clear queue ownership. So we have so many different, I guess, work streams in a sense. So I'm that queue owner for the creative team, and we have a queue owner for our web team. We have a queue owner for our social team, and so they're kind of those traffic control, quality check individuals that are managing it before the project starts. And then the project lead is kind of this new concept we've been trying to really identify of once a project is assigned and you have all these different players, who is that key person that is going to bring that project to completion? That's making sure it's hitting all the points, all the tasks are getting done, um, that it's flowing through the right steps. Because once I assign it out and we have over 200, 300 active design requests or projects going, I can't keep track of every single one of those timelines. So we have to have usually a content expert kind of within one of those projects.
And to me, the key there is it's obviously you have individual, several different people that are part of the project, and they're doing their work. But in order, I always think of it as, probably a crass saying, but kind of the one throat to choke. You need someone who's ultimately
Mhm.
responsible for this thing, and everyone needs to do their part. But it needs to come back to you. You can't blame 10 people if something goes sideways, or you can't expect 10 people that are involved to all have the same level of knowledge. So who's the lead? Who's ultimately responsible to ensure that this is done? So that makes perfect sense. That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of overview of what we've been working on and um, yeah, using RoboHead and data and all those things to kind of help with our overall workflows has been a journey and really insightful as well for the whole process.
I'm kind of curious, Grace, as you say this, like, what is, obviously it's, where's the challenge? It's all this work that's coming in. How do we prioritize and do the right work and make sure we can meet our SLAs and our deadlines? But there's a change management component here. Obviously, around the process, you've owned so
Hmm.
much of it and bringing in other folks. What have you found? Like, what have been some of the challenges and successes as you're kind of, because you're on this journey, but it's not complete. It's probably never complete, frankly. What have been some of the challenges that you've faced, and maybe are there some creative things or things that you've done to help kind of overcome those bottlenecks as you go down on improving this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been responsible a lot for kind of training the whole team on RoboHead before, so I've run into this a lot where you can't force curiosity. So if someone's not curious about a project management tool, if they don't want to dig into the layers of it, you're not going to get what you need sometimes from the individuals that you're working with. And I was so curious about the program that I had a hard time getting in that space and realizing someone's not going to have that same curiosity and interest that I do in this everyday work. So how do I make it accessible and interesting and easy to understand? And one of the mistakes I made early on in training was I would go, look at all the cool stuff RoboHead has. You can do this and you can do that and you can share this thing and you can create a link. And it's so awesome. Look at all the things you can do for your workflow. And people would go cool and check out and leave that meeting and not have anything to take away because I didn't tell them directly how can you insert these tools into your current workflow and giving very specific direction of when you're writing a note you need to do the at sign and tag someone so then they're getting that email and just little notes like that where I instead of saying you can do this it is you should do this, we should be doing it this way, and kind of giving that clear direction so when they go in the program they know what they need to do, they don't feel like they have to explore it. So I like to, I think I actually might have heard this from one of your previous talks, Will, but the concept that you're always going to have someone who can't, who won't, um, or who doesn't know how. And so I think learning who fits those categories and how can you kind of fit to that. And for the people who don't know how, that's where we start of training them, getting them in there. And, so I kind of approach it in that way.
I love that. Like one of the things I remember I struggled with is I'm always trying to teach the fun, it's like, what do they really need? And regardless of how cool something else is, what do they really need? And I'm sure this is very common knowledge, but for me, it was new. Like many years ago, someone came to me and said, "Hey, people can retain so much information at once, like 3 things, let's say." It's kind of an arbitrary number, but let's say it's 3 things. If you show them 5 or you show them 10, it doesn't matter how cool those other things are. 1, they can't retain them. And then 2, the more stuff you give them, the less control you have over which things they remember and which things fall out, right? And so if you're showing someone 8 things, 3 of which are critical, doesn't matter how cool those other 5 things are. And oh, by the way, maybe they remember thing 5 instead of thing 3, and now they're not equipped and they're struggling with the change because they don't know the thing they need. So it's really neat how you talked about like the role-based training and finding the lead and understanding what to give and what to maybe hold back because it's not the time. Like might be super cool, and in 6 months they're going to be ready to learn that and embrace it. Not today though, and that can be hard when you're excited about what you're showing, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah, it's kind of like a little dance that you're doing, So it is, and everyone's so different in how they learn these kind of tools. So it's that's been really interesting to learn how to teach the program.
Awesome. This has been super interesting conversation. Do you have any advice? You've already kind of given a little bit, but if there's someone in a similar role who's trying to kind of streamline the process and deal with like an increase in output without maybe a comparable increase in people, do you have any suggestions? You've already laid out a bunch here, but any like what's the one thing they should really take away from as they approach this sort of change management?
Something that kind of grounds me is um, almost looking at the tool as a newbie as much as possible, as that first time learner, to almost as a way to ground yourself, because it's so easy to get so close to the machine that you forget what it feels like to be onboarded into it. And so it's one thing I do for myself is I've actually created a requester account, and I will sometimes log in there and just like create a request and see what the workflow is like, and what do I have access to? What can I see? Because as a project manager, I have all the visibility behind a project, but as a requester, I can only see my request. So I think sometimes changing your point of view and thinking of yourself as a learner of what would I need in this position has been really helpful for me.
Awesome. This has been super, super helpful to me, and I hope to all of our watchers as well, Grace. So thank you so much for giving us this time. Thank you who are watching for joining another Behind the Process, and we'll see you next time.